Everybody Hates Rand is a Wheel of Time podcast that will contain spoilers for all 14 books. So if you're anti-spoiler, stop this, read all 14 books, and come back. We'll be here, waiting.
Our title is a joke and is meant to be taken as such. Everybody in this context refers to us and our cats. You are free to feel however you want about Rand. He's a fictional character. Please don't DM us.
The world is a mess, Dark One stretching out his hand. The dragon's reborn, the fire's been fanned, but everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand.
I think I'm prepared to say that. I would rather read about Perrin staring soundlessly into the forest than anything that's going on with Elaine.
Yeah, me too, and I would argue it's because Perrin, for the most part, has a more interesting group of people around him. Like, as much as Massima is a terrible person, and it's like he just represents a problem that you should kill. At least he's so totally insane that you're like, what will he do next?
Keeping me on my toes.
Yeah. And Elaine is just sort of, at this point especially, surrounded by a lot of women who are written with Robert Jordan's usual nuance and care with female characters, which is to say that most of them are bland and uninteresting or outright misogynistic portrayals. So
yeah,
there's not like a lot of redeeming qualities there.
I know somehow Robert Jordan throughout the Kamen plot manages to take Brigitte from a very complex and interesting and multifaceted character and distill her into her state-sanctioned 3 character traits.
Yeah.
And that is usually angry, wears pants, and
has some memory problems.
Yeah.
Residual trauma from being ripped out of Teleron Riyadh.
And I'm like, Robert, what is wrong with you?
I know, it's a real tragic reduction of a female character who starts out with so much nuance, but yeah, it's like Elaine has a toxic effect on those around her. Again, like Chernobyl.
Like Chernobyl. I also just cannot stand Elaine. Like, I do not find any redeeming qualities in her at this point at all. Perrin, at least, I sometimes have trickles of fondness for, or he's making interesting decisions. I feel like Elaine is always making the wrong choice. Anyway, we'll get into it, but first we should introduce the podcast.
Yeah, this is Everybody Hates Rand, your friendly neighborhood Wheel of Time podcast. I'm Emily Jushaw.
I am Sally Gidger.
And as we've alluded to, we're with Elaine, and yes, this is unfortunate. However, this week I have been spending some time oh my god, I just noticed your haiku.
Yeah. Yeah, Brianna gave that to me last Christmas. It's just like a collage of different pictures of Bokuto from the Haikyuu manga.
You can see the one with Karu. Ho ho ho!
Yeah, it's very inspirational.
That is very inspirational.
Yeah, I shifted my board a little bit because there's some stuff I want to frame. So I took that down and I put up my inspirational Bokuto photo card.
It's very inspirational.
I feel he can do it.
I feel motivated just looking at it. I also feel motivated by, I've been listening to this podcast this week. The podcast is the worst idea of all time. I don't mean to skirt around it. But they've been doing a watch-along podcast of And Just Like That. The Sex and the City revival. These two guys have only watched Sex and the City 2, the movie.
The movie, not the show.
And Sex and the City 1, the movie. They do not consider the content of the show canon. However, they have watched Sex and the City and Sex and the City 2 52 times each. So arguably they know about as much about the characters as any
I would disagree with that. I feel like the characterization in the movies are slightly different, but it's okay. I don't need to cross swords with these fine Australian gentlemen.
Well, I feel like their characterizations of them in the movie are particularly relevant too, and just like that.
You're right.
That said, that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is that these two New Zealand gentlemen, have really reinvigorated me with the idea of talking about media that is objectively quite bad with positive energy. So I'm going to try and bring that. I'd like to start out with a game that I've stolen from them called Favorite Character, Least Favorite Character.
Okay.
Here are the rules. We have to say our favorite character and our least favorite character in the section that we've read. That's self-explanatory. It has to be characters who have actually appeared on screen. It can't just be mentions, or otherwise we'd probably end up doing Matt all the time. I'm going to ban Elaine for the time being because it's like, it's just like Sex and the City. If you had to list your least favorite character, you'd choose Carrie Bradshaw all the time.
Yeah.
It would be Elaine all the time. I can go first because I'm prepared, if you want.
Yeah, go ahead. Lay it on me.
My favorite character in this section is Elise, who's not the main, one of the main ladies in the Kin. She is just like, her only trait is hypercompetence. And all she does, every time she's on screen, she's just like getting things done. She's just like there, doing it. She's also taking part in what I think is one of the more intriguing aspects of the Camelin plot lines, which is the deprogramming, to use, cult terminology, of the Suldam and Damon that were captured as prisoners of war by Rand in Path of Daggers, and for some reason he was like, I don't know what to do with these people, I'll send them to Elaine.
Yeah.
Which was such like a batshit decision.
I know. Completely unhinged.
Like, I can't even comprehend the rationale of that. I don't think we got the rationale of that. He was just like, just send them to Elaine.
Yeah, I also love that they reference the Ashaman sort of like delivering this like a bouquet of flowers. Yeah. Like, this is from your boyfriend.
Ashaman shows up with like, what is it, like 50 Suldam?
Yeah, like a shit ton of people. It's like 20.
There's only like 5 Damon.
Yeah, there's only 5 Damon, and yeah, there's like 20 or 25 Suldam. Like 30 people just roll up.
But we can get into that in a little bit. Anyway, Elise is my favorite character in this one. I would say my least favorite character,
while I think about it, I can throw in my wildly out of character choice for favorite character.
Oh, who's that?
Which is Lan in these sections.
Lan is great in this. Yeah. Lan was a close follow-up to mine.
Lan, we'll get into it in the second chapter, but they're having a discussion about whether or not these women who have been collared against their will should have the collars taken off.
Yeah.
They are considering this because they're like, we do not know how they will behave.
Well, yeah, they're brainwashed, so they're like, is this a ruse of some of these women, and they will just release the Suldam whose deprogramming has not been completed.
Yes, so I logically understand where they are coming from. But Lan comes in with the correct response, which is, you have to take the collars off.
Otherwise you're no better than the Seanchan.
Yeah.
Ethically, there is only one answer here.
Yes, there is only one ethical option.
Yeah, all Lan is doing in this chapter is being pretty.
Yeah.
Insinuating wildly that he and Nynaeve have fantastic sex.
Yeah.
And making correct ethical decisions.
Yeah, he's just out here being like, male wife of the century.
He also is so like quick, They're like, here's the problem, what should we do? And Lan's like he's like not even part of the conversation.
Yeah.
He's a warder, which means that he's background setting. He's the set piece, but he's like, oh no, actually here's something I do have an opinion on.
Yeah.
And will speak about. I guess I'd say my least favorite character is probably whichever Aes Sedai is with Elaine at the beginning.
Oh,
Saritha?
Yeah.
I think. She's just like, the usual Aes Sedai caricature, pretty wildly condescending.
Yeah.
and not very productive. Also, she might be a dark friend who murdered Adelius. I truly cannot ever remember.
I know which three. I know
Which of the three
I
it
know
is.
Marilil is one of them, because that's the name I recognized. Or maybe she's not.
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure Marilil isn't the dark friend.
Okay. Well, I just know there's three names that they're
Yeah,
always
okay,
like,
so-
it's these three.
I mean, wait, here, let's do your least favorite character first, then I'll do a very quick recap
Okay.
of Path of Daggers, because that's pretty necessary.
Yeah, the murder
For
of
these-
Adelius is quite a big deal, actually.
The murder of Adelius, which isn't as big of a deal as I would like it to be. I love murder mysteries. It's the most compelling plot.
I think I would have to say Brigitte. I'm sorry, Brigitte.
I
They're
understand.
very out of character choices for me, but she's just... A lot of it is Robert Jordan's writing. He just distills her into being angry. And I also feel like a lot of my distaste for Brigitte comes from the way that she is forced to respond to Elaine's incompetence.
Right.
She's just very, like, angry and bossy and upset about everything, and she's not, like... Again, this is Robert Jordan writing it, but she's not, like, really communicating why she is angry beyond the fact that Elaine is doing stupid things. She's just sort of, like, mad.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, like, bad communication is no longer an interesting plot point. William Shakespeare did it in 1616 or whatever, and then I stopped being interested in it, so...
Yeah, I agree. Okay, y'all, here's the Path of Daggers recap, because unfortunately, and this is perhaps one of the reasons we skipped Path of Daggers, if not majority, quite a large chunk of Path of Daggers is spent with this group that we are still with in Camelin.
Yes.
So we've got Elaine and Nynaeve, obviously. They're warders, Brigitte and Lan. Nynaeve and Lan, newlywed, apparently having wild sex everywhere, but
Good for them.
they're in Path of Daggers mostly narrated by Elaine. I don't actually remember if Nynaeve ever narrates.
I don't think so.
Avienda occasionally narrates in Path of Daggers, but she's there with them. Then they have the 5 Aes Sedai who are part of the Salidar contingent of Aes Sedai. That's Vandine and Adelius, the 2 old lady sisters. Marilil, Saritha, and Carrie-Anne, I believe, are the names. And there is a constant power struggle between all those Aes Sedai and Nynaeve and Elaine. Nynaeve and Elaine feel justified in having power because they are the ones who are higher in the power, capital P. But the other Aes Sedai are sort of ingrained in, like, this rut of Elaine and Nynaeve were not raised in the normal manner, and therefore they are not quite actual Aes Sedai, and so therefore their standing doesn't count.
Yep.
So that's going on. They have with them the single Black Aja prisoner Ipson,
Ibsen.
who they captured back in Crown of Swords when they had that big fight at the house where they got Bowl of the Winds. Ipson is originally in the care of the kin, but is sort of transferred eventually to Vandine and Adelius. There is quite a lot, or at least more than anyone wants, which is any, conversation about whether or not to torture Ipson. There are rules against it in the tower, like physical torture, but it is heavily implied that Vandine and Adelius get around this by utilizing psychological torture or emotional torture, so...
Which isn't any better.
No, for sure not.
And it's like, Vandine and Adelius, I was rooting for you the whole time.
We were all rooting for you. You're old lady sisters.
Yeah,
it's a
just-
compelling narrative.
Yeah, but you just, everywhere I go, Robert Jordan's playing the torture card.
Yeah, he loves it. No one loves it more than Robert Jordan.
What a freak.
They are accompanied by a contingent of sea folk windfinders, women who will more or less take the reins when they are using the Bowl of the Winds and get dragged by all these Aes Sedai inland away from their ships when, they have to use the Bowl of the Winds.
Yes.
And we'll get into them a little bit more, but there is, of course, the constant power struggle between the sea folk and everyone else, because the sea folk are bossy ladies and want to be in charge, and the Aes Sedai are also bossy ladies and want to be in charge.
And eventually, the kin become bossy ladies who want to be in charge.
Ah yes, the kin who are initially subservient are, through Nynaeve's intervention alone, we are led to believe,
Yeah.
become a group with a quote-unquote spine. Women who are, not afraid of the Aes Sedai as they once were, but for the most part recognize their own value and standing in a system which has disenfranchised them.
Yep.
Which I say good for them. But
Yeah.
of course, we're coming at it from Elaine and Nynaeve's perspective, and so to them, the kin becoming free agents is simply an annoyance that they must contend with constantly. That's one of the things I like about Elise, by the way, is that she does not undergo this transformation.
Yeah.
She is never awestruck by the Aes Sedai. She just sort of gets along as herself
She's
for
a
the
sick
entirety.
character.
She's great. So yeah, the kin are slowly emerging as a power force, and they're along for the ride. This group of disparate women travel to the farm, which is where the kin, send their ladies to be rehabilitated or whatever, I don't know. Or just to, chill, because they can't all be in Ebudar at once. Which is where they use the Bowl of the Winds. This is a sequence that takes a full chapter. Most of it involves them linking. There's only, 2 pages of them actually using the Bowl of the Winds.
Yeah.
Using the Bowl of the Winds is done with Saidar, but, is described as pulling in Saidin in some way.
Yeah.
And it is such a massive output of power that every other channeling character in the vicinity of Ebudar, as far away as Ilion, feels the effects of the Bowl of the Winds being used. All of Rand's guys, when they're fighting on the border of Ilion, are like, oh my god, Sidon's weird.
Yeah.
And Rand's like, oh, I thought that was just me. And everyone's like, no, it wasn't just you.
It wasn't just you, you absolute
dummy.
madman.
But after using the Bowl of the Winds, they realize that Ebudar is being attacked. And not wanting the Bowl of the Winds to fall into the hands of the Seanchan, they vacate the farm and travel to mid-Andor somewhere, one of Elaine's estates. Of course, the Seanchan chase after them, and there's a whole sequence where they almost catch up, but Elaine unweaves the gateway and causes a big explosion,
Blowing everyone up.
But erasing all traces of their passage. Then they travel through Andor, where the main event of importance is that Vandene goes to see her sister who's with Ipson and finds both of them dead. Mm-hmm. And the group, Vandene, Elaine, and Nynaeve, conclude that the killer has to be one of the 3 other Aes Sedai. Which I'm not too sure on the reasoning there. That's presented in this chapter, at least. They say it can't be the Sea Folk because the Sea Folk wouldn't know of the herb that is used to poison these women. Which, okay, fair enough, Poirot. But then they say it also can't be the kin because we're pretty sure none of the kin are dark friends. In fact, we are sure that none of the kin are dark friends.
Which is a huge logical
leap. There's 200 of them.
Yeah, they just statistically impossible. I mean, it's not statistically impossible, but it's very improbable.
Yeah, and it's just they're coming at this based on information that's been given to them by Ipson.
Yeah.
Another evil woman who is giving this information under torture.
Yeah, it just...
Not exactly reliable.
Yeah. Robert Jordan, you could have come up with, a more solid reason. Only the Aes Sedai knew which house they were in or something like that. I am an idiot, and I've seen enough mysteries to come up with a more plausible reason.
I've seen all of Monk on DVD at my nana and grandfather's house.
There has to be a more plausible reason than we are 1000% positive none of the kin are dark friends. Maybe a dark friend didn't murder them.
Yeah, maybe they just did the murder because they wanted to. Have you thought of that?
Just not only dark friends aren't the only people doing murder.
Yeah. There are other motives for murder. Maybe someone was just I really don't like Adelius. Yeah. Which, fair enough.
I mean, yeah, torture maid over here.
Yeah.
God. So, one of those little plot things, so you're just Robert.
Robert, why?
What's happening here?
But if we take it at face value, we are left with this mystery that only one of these 3 women could have killed her.
Yeah.
Which is an intriguing mystery, because of course, which of these women is the bad guy? Who knows? That means we can't trust them.
Yeah.
That's fun, and I wish we got to get a little more, Detective Elaine or Detective Nynaeve about it, but sadly Elaine is busy running her country.
Yeah, Nynaeve's gonna fuck off here in a few chapters.
Yeah, Nynaeve is about to piece the fuck out, which, who blames her?
Yeah, I'd be like,
Who can't blame her?
Camelin is not pour moi.
Yeah, meanwhile, in Camelin, we open up with Elaine riding with a very small contingent of bodyguards, all of them women. Mm-hmm. Which is notable, because Brigitte is only recruiting women right now for some reason. And she's with Saritha, and Saritha's warder, Ned.
I know, Ned. I almost chose Ned as my favored character.
I forgot Ned, or I might have.
His name is Ned, which is so charming.
He's just like a dude. He's like, boop, boop, boop. Ned and Saritha and a few guards. Mostly through Elaine's narration and partly through conversation, we are given the political situation. Elaine is recognized as the daughter heir, but is not necessarily recognized by everyone in Camelin as the heir to the throne. Elaine has not taken the correct next steps to become queen because she needs more backing from the royal houses of Andor.
Yep.
So she's in a sketchy position there, and Brigitte is angry at her for a variety of reasons, but especially because she won't agree to take more guards with her into the city. Elaine, as usual, this is one of her top characteristics, is very cavalier about her personal safety. We find out that she and Avienda have been, at least once, have gone out in disguise into the city at night, which is a trope used extensively in fantasy literature, especially fairy tales and things like that, to have royal people go out into their own city in disguise. That's used all the time in the Arabian Nights. But it's especially, characteristic of, I would say, the last 20 years in proto-feminist literature.
Yes.
To portray a spunky princess.
Yes.
In that way.
A fun version of this trope can be found in Bitter Blue.
Yes.
By Kristen Kishore.
As with all tropes, there's nothing inherently good or bad about it.
No.
It all depends on the usage. And Robert Jordan is, making fun of it a little bit by sort of taking it in bad faith from its context. I would say the context of this trope is meant to be a sort of threshold crossing. It is meant to have a person of an upper class interacting with the lower class. Disguises are, of course, a very heavy use trope throughout literature. Find them in the Odyssey. But, there's, a mixture of classes there. With the princess trope, it is often used as a metaphor for coming of age.
Yeah, there's also roots of this trope in the story of the Buddha, when he was Prince Siddhartha, not allowed to leave the palace. We see that sometimes coming out in the trope, particularly with princesses. It's not safe for you to go out because you are a woman.
Yeah, so there's this, the microcosm is of emerging from a very small, cloistered safe space, much like a womb, out into the larger, unsafe world.
Yep.
So that's, of course, super, archetypical.
Yes, and we're also relevant context, I think, coming back to the story of the Buddha. He obviously goes outside the palace walls and is like, oh, man, it's shit out here. Yeah. Life is not as good as it is in the palace. And I think we often see that in sort of especially in fantasy, it's the princess goes out and she's like, oh my god, people are starving.
Yeah.
And I've never starved a day in my life. It's this sort of
awakening class consciousness.
Yeah, you mentioned that mixing of classes, but it also, I think, is used to be our princess is a good and ethical character because she cares that people in her city are starving. And the only way she realizes this is by being in disguise and sneaking out of the palace.
Yeah, and it totally relieves her of any guilt.
Yes. She's like, I just didn't know.
Yeah,
and how could I have?
It frames her in ignorance and innocence, especially.
Yes.
Which there's an argument to be made for the innocence of princesses, which is more to the point that they are usually children.
Yes.
And so, the move from innocence to knowledge of the outside world is another of those coming-of-age tropes.
100%. 100%.
Now, Robert Jordan is taking all of that and making fun of it by having Elaine be the reverse. she remains completely naive to class consciousness throughout, both when she's, out and about in disguise, one assumes, but also here. She's saying things like, children aren't allowed to starve in Camelin, when it's like, patently that's untrue.
Yeah, girl.
There are people starving she's just this hyper-idealistic, hyper-unrealistic person who doesn't seem to have any concept of how to go about fixing the problems that she's seeing in her city.
I know, she is, and this is going to be such, very particular nitpicking, but these are the types of things I talk about and at work every day. She's like, the palace kitchens are open every day, feeding thousands of people, which completely ignores the many barriers it takes someone to get from the quote-unquote slums of Camelin up to the palace during your time frame. Or people who, have to be at their job, or they will lose their job that allows them to buy the little food they do have. It's just, that is not a solution, Elaine.
Yeah, she's like, there's so much food available in this city. We learn later on that there are food shortages encroaching, by the way, and you can be willing to bet that the poor population is going to be the first to suffer.
Yes.
But she's like, there's so much food available in Camelin, and these people just aren't eating. And it's like...
You dumb fuck.
I 100% do not believe that is the case.
Yeah.
There are barriers that you are unwilling or unable to see.
Yeah.
It's not just simply that these are refugees who are so depressed that they can't bring themselves to eat.
Yeah.
Even if perhaps Robert Jordan believes that too. It's unclear.
Yeah, Robert Jordan, again, we get some cognitive dissonance, he did not quite believe or know what the characters he was writing was about, because you often get the sense that he's picking fun at Elaine, but you also very often get the sense that he thinks Elaine is an incredibly good person.
And an incredibly good leader.
Yeah. Oh my god. All the time we get, Elaine is the right person for Camelin. That we have to believe in Elaine's secession plotline because there's nobody else who could be ruling Camelin. And I'm like, patently untrue.
Diane
right is
there.
Literally right there. Balwer and Norry has been ruling Andor.
Balwer and Norry. If I hadn't made the rule about they have to appear on screen, he'd be my favorite.
I know, but he'd be my favorite every time we were in Camelin, so it's a good rule.
I love Balwer and Norry for two very important reasons. One is that he is literally, and Elaine herself admits to this, the backbone of Camelin. Yeah. And the other is that every time he's on screen, he is actively boring the hell out of Elaine,
I know.
Which is what she does to me.
Uh-huh.
So I love the sweetness of that payback.
I know, where she's just like, oh, this is so boring. And I'm like, yeah, tell me about it. I have the opposite experience. I'm like, Balwer and Norry is on screen telling me very interesting details.
Vital information.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's boring Elaine, but I'm delighted.
I'm riveted.
It's like
Balwer. Yeah. Oh my god.
Balwer and Norry and Balwer. Yeah, the power couple of the century.
They would conquer the world.
Hoary. Their celebrity couple name. Oh god. God, I would love them.
Seven Balwer.
Back to the princes in disguise trope. Robert Jordan also is making fun of it by being like, hey, isn't that a silly trope? Because obviously she'd be super in danger the whole time.
Yeah.
She's totally disregarding her personal safety, which is a dumb thing to do when you're the ruler of a country.
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, obviously.
Yeah.
Duh.
Yeah.
What more do you want me to say?
Yeah.
You don't need to But also, Elaine has never given much regard to her personal safety, so it's pretty on brand for her to be doing that. And for Avienda to be enabling her.
Yeah, Avienda is the type of yes-man friend that nobody needs.
Yeah. Just doing the most to do the worst.
Yeah, just chronic enabling out of her.
Yeah. Woof. So that's sort of where we're at in the first chapter, and the only major event is that Brigitte comes out to find Elaine to tell her that Elenia and, I am so sorry, this is the only way I can think of to pronounce this name, Neon.
Neon. Yeah, it's Naen, I think.
Naean. Elenia and Neon, I guess.
No, I love it. It has to be Neon.
Are two of Elaine's top contenders for the throne of Andor. They're both, they both meet the requirements in that they're women and they're the heads of noble houses, and they have shown, obviously, that they want to be taking over. The reason that they were in Erangel, this other town, was because they started an uprising, which Daelin, in the last book or two, just immediately squashed and got them in prison. So Elaine was having them escorted from Erangel to Camelin to, I don't know, stand trial or something like that. and Brigitte news is that they were intercepted and have disappeared. So very obviously they are probably in the hands of their supporters, and this is leading up to the Succession War plotline.
Actually in the hands of the main rival for Elaine, whose name I cannot remember.
Not one of them?
It's not Elenia or Neon, it's Aramilla?
Oh,
maybe?
yeah.
They're actually captive in her camp.
Yes. Another way to torture women.
Yeah, it's an extremely unpleasant plotline.
Yeah, I forgot about it. But, I mean, it doesn't matter, you know? Like, thank you for
You're
correcting me, but, like...
I'm reading about it in Crossroads of Twilight, that's the only reason I know.
And it's just, it doesn't matter. It's just the bad guys that Elaine has to overcome.
Yeah, it truly does not matter what is going on with her supporters. I'm just proud that for once I remember something. Thank you.
That was awesome.
Can you believe it, you guys? Look how far she's come.
Can you believe?
I think there's a tapestry involved, too. I actually do know where Elenia and Neon ended up. That's what we call growth.
So Elaine immediately turns back to go to the palace. I don't know why, actually. It's not like she does anything once she's there.
So I'm gonna fix this problem.
Yeah, she just scares everyone.
Yeah, she's just thundering through the hallways or whatever.
Like, all the soldiers are like, oh my god, she's back early.
And she's also acting extremely paranoid because the assumption is someone knew where to find Elenia and Neon because there were spies in the palace.
Yeah, Brigitte's like, they found them, and Elaine's like, that means there's a spy in the palace, like, looking into the camera, and I'm like, was that not a given to begin with?
Like, there are spies everywhere.
Yeah, this doesn't hold the same weight as the killer must be one of these 3 people who's in our inner circle, you know?
Yeah, it's not like they were like, these people knew, and therefore one of them is the spy.
Yeah.
It's like, there are spies in this palace that employs thousands of people and is a political center.
Yeah, we're in book 9. I just had to check. We're in book 9 of this series. We are very familiar with this point, as Elaine herself ought to be, with the vast workings of spy networks across this country, as ineffective as they sometimes are.
Yeah.
But all of the Aes Sedai have these eyes and ears systems. There are people like Balwer out there who, even if you don't have, like, intentional spies, know how to tease out information from people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know, girl. It's just your fault for having a security problem.
Yeah, and it's just like...
You can teleport. At least she says this. She's like, I mean, I could have got them by myself.
You could have. And Brigitte is like, it's not your fault. Queens can't do everything. And I'm like, you can do this stuff.
You probably could have done this.
You probably could have done that. It would have taken like 5 minutes.
Yeah. It's teleporting!
But you have time to wander around the city and wave at people. She keeps trying to convince me that this is an important political activity. Wandering around and waving at people. And I'm like, I do not believe it.
You know what happened to a lot of political figures who wandered around waving at people? They got shot. R.I.P. JFK.
Yeah, and like, I think Saritha even says that. She's like, someone could just, like, throw a rock at you and kill you right now, you know.
And Elaine's like, well, with you here, they'd need 2 rocks. And I'm like, rocks are everywhere. Rocks are on the street.
It's very easy to find 2 rocks.
You're telling me there aren't 2 people in Camelin with a fastball pitch to take out 2 Aes Sedai?
Yeah.
This is the same city where that one random Aes Sedai was knifed in an alley, and we didn't know who it was for books on end.
Yeah.
If ever.
Another random thing that Elaine mentions that I only bring up because it will be just like this continuous plot point is that there are frequent arsons happening in the city.
What?
Which you would think would be a more fun plot line, but it's just dark friends doing mischief. I wish it was just arsons. I would be more interested if it was just
if there's just like some rogue arsonist.
Yeah.
Just sign me up.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. What's going on? But no, it's the nasty rapist who is now...
Oh, yeah.
Or his group of people.
Yeah, it's so disappointing because what we have here is, against the backdrop of a political drama, we have the makings of a very interesting, like, mystery setup. You know? There's been a murder of a high-ranking person. Yeah. There's all these fucking arsons. Who's the spies, you know?
Yeah.
We could be focusing on all of that, but instead, we're with Elaine.
Instead, Elaine is just like, I have to meet with a bunch of merchants, And the sea folk women are just so angry and rude. It's like, could you be a little less racist?
Yeah, could you calm the fuck down?
Anyway, we get back to the palace, and she's like, blah, 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 blah. And then poor Reen Harfor shows up and is like, here's your entire schedule for the day.
The most long-suffering character that anyone can imagine.
God, and Elaine is like, we have to look out for spies. And Reen Harfor just, like, 1,000-yard stare.
What do you fucking think?
It's like, what do you think I do all day, Elaine?
Yeah. God.
Sit on my hands?
God damn it. Yeah, Brigitte goes off to do paperwork after berating Elaine for the 1,000th time for doing her little escapades out in the city. Reen Harfor shows up and is like, hello, here's your whole schedule. Elaine's like, well, fuck all that for now. I'm off to do something else.
Yeah.
She happens to see, while they're out and about, one of the Daman being escorted by two of the kin. And she goes in that direction to change her clothes or something like that, but she almost runs into Van Dien, who is being followed by two of the kin whose approach to being reunited with members of the White Tower. They're like, well, we want to be novices. We want to be reintegrated into the tower rather than taking up whatever ancillary position we're going to end up in. And Van Dien is approaching Elaine to be like, I can't handle these fuckos. I'm too busy dealing with the murder of my sister or whatever. And also, they have puzzled out that it has to have been one of the Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
And Elaine's like, I mean, I'm running a country.
Yeah. Elaine, to be fair, is like, I can't deal with this.
Yeah.
So Nynaeve shows up, and they're like, great, Nynaeve will deal with it.
And Nynaeve's like, I can't deal with it. I'm having sex till 11 a.m.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I mean...
But, I mean, Nynaeve is more valid than Elaine, I think, in this situation. Like, you could maybe squeeze in these two novices between your meetings with merchants. Nynaeve is busy.
Nynaeve's super busy
Yeah.
doing bedroom stuff.
Yeah.
Whatever that. And boy, does Robert Jordan want to leave it a mystery.
And I'm like, he's like, do you get it? And I'm like...
I bet it's the most vanilla sex.
I'm like, yeah, I get it. It's fine. They're newlyweds. It
Elaine's
happens.
like, I don't think that can be good
I know,
sex.
Elaine is such a bitch about this. It really bothers me.
She has sex envy.
Yeah. Oh.
Not like, I don't know if that's a real phrase, it's just what I think of her.
Yeah.
A lot of Elaine is motivated by envy, but right now she is having envy of Nynaeve having a sex life. Mm-hmm. Elaine feels really upset by anyone who has sex in front of her. Not literally in front of her, but in her direct vicinity, because she is not personally fucking Rand.
This is a fascinating revelation to me. I never thought about that. I thought she was just a bitch.
I mean, I do think she is just a bitch, but I do think a lot of bitchiness stems from envy.
No, I think that's such a good point. She's particularly, what she says is she's like, Nynaeve is very, open and vocal about how happy she is in her relationship, with the implication that she loves to talk to other women about her sex life. Very Sex in the City, sitting around the breakfast table of her.
Which I think is hilarious, because can you imagine Nynaeve, then who is it? Elaine Avienda? Who would be the Samantha?
Brigitte's like, look at the ugly man I fucked.
Brigitte's like,
yeah.
And then, like, Van Dien?
Yeah.
Does Van Dien care about your sex life?
Yeah.
Come on, girl.
It's extremely, so I find it to be very charming, like, and just like a funny kind of turn of Nynaeve's character, just to be like, I'm very happily married and I really love my husband and I really enjoy having sex with him. And Elaine is like, she has to be lying to compensate for the fact that her marriage bed is ice cold and that sleeping next to Lan is like sleeping next to a hungry lion. And like,
she's like, look at Lan, he's frigid.
Yeah.
And it isn't until she witnesses Lan compliment Nynaeve that she's like, oh, maybe their sex is nice.
Yeah,
and
maybe
I'm like,
they...
have you heard the difference between public relationships and private relationships?
Yeah.
Lan and Nynaeve are allowed to treat each other very differently in private than they do in public.
That is totally acceptable and fine. And also, like, I mean, it makes sense. No, you're thinking, if you think about it in the terms of, like, envy. Elaine has, like, a huge complex about the fact that Avienda and Min have both slept with Rand and she has not. Which is why she corners him into sex in a few chapters. Mm-hmm. Poor Rand. You know?
Yeah.
Has Rand ever willingly entered into a sexual situation?
It sure doesn't read that way.
But you're just like, why are you saying these things rather than just, like, believing your friend? Nynaeve isn't typically the type of character that lies. To her friends, at least.
I mean, I would say she is a notorious, exaggerator to portray herself in the best light.
That's fair. That's fair. You got me
But
there.
I do also think that she is a highly puritanical character in the early series. And so the idea that she would willingly talk about and be excited about her sex life, I think would be a pretty indicative sign that she is telling the truth.
Yeah. No, you got me there. You got me there. That's definitely more accurate than what I was saying. Nynaeve is... We all know this. She's a weird character. She says weird
They're all
things.
weird characters.
But yeah, and it's also just like, it's just such a shitty assumption of Elaine's to just be like, I am correct about their relationship.
She's insufferable.
Anyway, we don't need to spend more time on that dumb plot point. It just, like, is really insufferable to me.
Yeah, Elaine's like, I can't take care of these novices because I'm the queen. And Nynaeve's like, I can't do it because I'm having a lot of sex, and also I don't want to.
Yeah.
Therefore, Vandine, it's your problem. And Vandine's just like, I mean, fine.
Yeah.
I'll put him to work anyway. So I'm doing detective work on my sister's murder. And it's like, good.
Well, I mean, you should. They obviously figured it out.
Yeah.
They're very smart and paying attention.
And, like, speaking of bitchiness, Nynaeve's like, maybe if they help you out, it'll give you time to eat. And Vandine's like, I do eat. It tastes like ashes.
Yeah.
Because she's actively mourning. Her sister died a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Her sister, who we know she has been close to her entire life.
Yeah, like, very, very close.
Show a
friends and
modicum
sisters.
of sensitivity, Nynaeve.
I know. Ugh. I mean, speaking of bitchiness,
Ugh.
the two of them
Dynamic duo.
just want to slam their heads together.
Anyway, the two of them go looking for Rianne. Oh, right, because...
Nynaeve's like, Rand has good news.
Yeah, sorry, the motorcycle. Reen Harfor was like, Rianne wants to talk to you. So Elaine goes looking for her with a Nynaeve in tow. They come to Rianne and Elise with one of the Soldam, which is where we're sort of apprised of that situation. The deprogramming technique by these untrained women who are just sort of winging it. You know, they're not they're not therapists. They're just doing what they think will probably work, which is trying to convince all of the Soldam that they can in fact channel. And then Elaine says, then we should send them back to the Seanchan.
I know, girl, what the fuck are you saying?
Which politically makes sense if you are treating all of these people like, you know, chess pieces and not real people who, once they realize that they can channel, probably won't want to go back to the society that enslaves women who can channel. Like, Elaine, you're just going to have to figure out a way to dispense that information into Seanchan, the Empire. Because she's right, that information would severely damage the Empire. That's something we've been playing with since book 2.
Yeah.
But, like, these are people's lives.
Yeah, I lost all I'm gonna lose all the points I got for being smart earlier. I was like, why would you send them back? That makes sense. I was like, what are you doing? You just not want to deal with it?
And then get the fuck out of here.
I was like, why would you do this? No, that makes sense. But it's like, yeah, and also there's no guarantee that they would tell them. Like, we deal with this exact plot with Matt later in this book, I think. So just kind of disproving Elaine's hypothesis, one of the Soldam that Matt and Egianan work with in Ebudar in order to get out of Ebudar has been apprised of the fact that she can channel, and it's like really fucking with her psychologically, but she's not telling anybody because she doesn't want to be enslaved.
Would you? Yeah. Fuck, I forgot to turn the heater off.
Well, that's our heater. We have to keep it on or we'll freeze to death.
Anyway, this particular Soldam, along with all the other Soldam, is resistant to this technique because, of course, he would be. It would be very psychologically damaging.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, though, Rianne's good news is that 3 of the 5 Daman are wanting to be uncollared, which is forward progress.
Yeah.
You know, because up until this point, they have been resistant to the very idea of that. That's how brainwashed they are. And for 2 of these women, these are women who can channel who were taken in the recent Seanchan invasions. So they are not like Seanchan natives. They are people who have only been in the system, so to speak, for at most a year or 2. Which is still quite a chunk of time.
Yeah.
To be to be enslaved. But they're like, yeah, that's no problem. We're fine with that. But the big problem is Olivia, who is a woman who was born and raised in Seanchan, has been a Daman her entire adult life, which is a considerable time, she is, what, 700 years old?
I think they say like 400.
400 years old, which is another indication that women who can channel age considerably slower.
Yeah, and they say she was taken when she was like 14, so it's been like 386 years that she has been a demon. And they're like, and again, logically I get why they're like, do we want to? The tiger is out of his cage. Yes.
Yes.
Like, that's
Which is my whole attitude about Olivia, by the way.
Yeah, no, seriously, Olivia rocks. She's like,
so
I want to
cool.
blow stuff up. She's very angry, very like, obviously she's angry. She's been enslaved her entire life.
Yeah, they're like, she wants to kill the Soldam, and I'm like, okay.
You know what? Maybe let her. I don't know. Maybe just like put him in a ring and see what happens.
Yeah.
But
They're like, Olivia, here's the other kicker, Olivia is more powerful than Nynaeve.
Yeah.
The most powerful channeler that anyone has ever met.
yeah.
So now we've got Olivia. And everyone's like, oh my god, yeah, can we let her out? And Lan immediately is like, yes, you have to.
Yeah.
But there's a pregnant pause, shall we say, while everyone thinks about it, before Nynaeve, who, for some reason, is the arbiter of this decision.
Yeah, Elaine says this is not a Camelin decision, it's an Aes Sedai decision, so it falls to Nynaeve, who is the most powerful, which is a dumb system.
Yeah, again, you guys are all a part of this team. You can collaborate. Whatever. But Nynaeve ultimately is like, yeah, Lan's right, we can't just... when they want to be let out, obviously we have to let them out. And Lan is like, fucking rad, babe.
Good job, wife.
Yeah, I mean, he says Tashar Manatherin, but
Which
I
is
think...
like his version of fucking rad, babe.
yeah, fucking rad, babe is so much cooler, I think. Oh, yeah.
That's my wife.
My wife! Lan does Borat voice in the background. Elaine also approves of this decision, to Elaine's credit. Modicum of credit.
But can I say, this is... Elaine has this, like, monologue where she's like, I'm also really proud of Nynaeve for making this decision. If Nynaeve had made a different decision, would you have just been like, well, Nynaeve says we gotta keep her in prison. Ridiculous. And she's like, Lan is so right. We cannot keep people collared and enslaved. Says the two women who
Yes.
kept Mokadean collared and enslaved
The irony is rich.
for the better part of 3 books.
And Robert Jordan is completely just not self-aware at all.
So it is a moment, to be sure. But at least they make...
I didn't even think about that, but you're so right.
She's just like it is this just like impassioned couple little paragraphs about how they...
And you can tell Robert Jordan was like, I am anti-slavery. That is my thesis. I think people should be free.
Yeah.
And you're like, bud?
Point of order.
2 books ago you sure thought differently.
Yeah. It is just absurd. But they make the right decision for Olivia, and the tiger is out of her cage.
Oh boy.
Yes. Yes.
My girl.
Yeah.
But those are those 2 chapters.
Those 2 chapters, man.
Unfortunately, the next 2 chapters are quite long and will introduce us to... reintroduce some of the most rancid characters in the series, but hey, what are you gonna do? It's
But
Robert Jordan.
Balwer and Norry is there, right?
But Balwer and Norry does make an appearance, I believe.
Pour one out for the main man.
Yeah, saving us. Thanks for listening. Thank you to Glenna McKenzie for our theme song, and to our patrons on Patreon, and our followers on social media. Do you have anything to add?
Just a shout out, we still have, a few stickers, so if you want to, if you've been considering joining our Patreon, or you want to check it out, if you join, until supplies run out, you will get, a sticker, or we've run out of one of the designs, but we still have 2 of our designs, our Juice sticker and our Tybalt sticker. So you could get those, in addition to your Patreon rewards, no extra cost there. So if you're interested in that, it's a good time to join our Patreon. We also have a lot of cool stuff going on. My read-along blogs, almost done with Crossroads of Twilight. We're talking about Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire on our other podcast, We Don't Watch Outlander. So lots of sick stuff going on over there.
Thanks for bearing with us through the heater this last little while. Thanks, everyone.
It's a good one.
Bye.